I call Jami-Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, the only party in this parliament that is playing political games is the New Zealand Labour Party. They are a party that is playing political games with $28 billion worth of New Zealand exports to TPP countries, because that's what it comes down to. That's the bottom line. $28 billion of exports to TPP countries. 40% of New Zealand's total exports go to TPP countries. This agreement gives New Zealand exporters access to a third of world economic output, Mr Speaker, 800 million consumers, Mr Speaker, and that is what this bill is all about, giving New Zealand access to. It's implementing the agreement that the government has signed up to, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and New Zealand's obligations under it. Mr Speaker, what a good day for the government. It's a good day for the government because the government is standing up and supporting New Zealand exporters. The government is standing up and supporting those who wish to help to grow the economy. It is standing beside those who are productive in this country and wish to export more goods to other nations around the world. And, Mr Speaker, undoubtedly trade agreements improve New Zealand's access to other nations, and it means we sell more goods to other nations. It means we grow faster as a nation. It means we build more jobs and have greater growth in this country. And, Mr Speaker, the speeches from David Clark and the speeches from Grant Robertson show us that the Labour Party has now abandoned New Zealanders and have abandoned free trade. Mr Speaker, I thought it was against standing orders to misrepresent in this House. Mr Speaker, a statement saying that the Labour Party supports free trade is misrepresenting, Mr Speaker. It is misleading the House, because the Labour Party is showing by their very actions, by their very statements, by their very speeches in this House that they no longer support free trade. And what's their argument? What's their argument for opposing TPP? Their argument for opposing TPP is that they came up with a policy that they believe is important, and the government didn't go and consult the Labour Party and ask whether we should put in place in the trade agreement provisions to allow them to implement their policy. A policy that they didn't have when they started negotiating Trans-Pacific Partnership, a policy that isn't necessary based on the figures we've seen this week, Mr Speaker, but it's their only reason for opposing Trans-Pacific Partnership. They can't stand up and say that it's bad that New Zealanders have greater export opportunities. They can't stand up and say it's bad that greater job creation and greater growth for New Zealand and that shouldn't be in place. They can't stand up and say that we've not met their bottom lines, because we have. Farm Act must be protected, done that. Correct. Corporations cannot successfully sue the government for regulation of the public interest, done that. The Treaty of Waitangi must be upheld, done that. Meaningful gains are made for our farmers in tariff reductions and market access, done that. Residents from overseas can be restricted if they wish to buy property, can do that too, done that. Every single one of their bottom lines we have met, because you can restrict those who wish to buy from overseas. It can be done. It can be done. We just can't ban them, which is not what their bottom line was. Their bottom line wasn't that foreigners be banned, Mr Speaker. It's that restrictions can be put in place. Well, Mr David Clark, let's have a look at the press releases that Labor have put in place, Mr Speaker, because the press releases Labor put in place said that restriction is what should be looked at. But why are we even having this debate over Labor Party policy? This is a trade agreement. This is about getting better access for New Zealanders. And, Mr Speaker, overwhelmingly, those who are in the business of helping to grow this economy, those who are in the business of helping to grow exports, those who are in the business of helping to sell goods and services to overseas markets, overwhelmingly support this agreement. Mr Speaker, the New Zealand National Party, alongside our support partners, with the exception, I think, of the Māori Party, are standing beside New Zealanders and working towards greater exports. The Labour Party used to believe in that. In fact, under the China Free Trade Agreement that Grant Robertson referred to, New Zealand has seen year on year 20% increases in exports. Mr Speaker, we know through previous trade agreements that when we do implement them, we see greater export growth compared to countries that don't. And, Mr Speaker, that is why the only successful Labour leader of the current generation recently said this: what always haunts one as the New Zealand Prime Minister is, will there be a series of trade blocs you're not part of? Because that's unthinkable for New Zealand, an exporter and small trading nation. So of course New Zealand has to be in the action with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's from Helen Clark, the only successful Labour leader of the current generation. They should be listening to her. The New Zealand government is doing what's right for New Zealand exporters and for New Zealanders. We're going to see more jobs, we're going to see greater growth, and that's what New Zealand deserves.
I call Kennedy Graham.